and whom and how it was before Brexit. We're headed over to London. This guy has done it many, many times as a part of the Jaguars media contingent. He is a longtime columnist at the Florida Times-Union, now 36 years into this thing. Back in the days of my dear late great friend John Stedman and all of the Colts, Jacksonville travails as well as expansion. Gene Fournette has seen it all. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Gene Fournette and also at the Florida Times-Union website. And it's great to have you back on, Gene. First off, over to London. I mean, all of our fans are headed over there, and you are the franchise that does this every year. All I've thought about all week is what an incredible competitive disadvantage this must be to give a game away and then have to go do this as part of a quote-unquote home game. The coaches and the organization really do have sort of a little bit of an arm tied behind their back when you only get 8 of these a year, right?
Well, it might be a little bit of a competitive disadvantage compared to having a regular home game in Jacksonville, but it's a huge financial advantage for the Jaguars. When they go and play a game in London, they take in revenue that doubles their regular home game revenue. And on top of that, they also get a percentage of the advertising revenue for their game because they have agreed to be the regular, to give away a regular home game each year. So financially, for a team that struggles, not so much in ticket sales, just in general revenue itself, local revenue, they're in the bottom 4, bottom 5 of the NFL, but this particular game represents almost 20% of their annual revenue. So that's why they do this game. I mean, financially, it's a huge windfall for them.
Well, it's really opened the doors for everything over there and all the other teams. And, certainly the Chargers are going to be a damaged franchise. I don't know that Jacksonville's ever really gotten it right from that moment that I was sitting with a bottle of champagne over at Bohager's in East Baltimore waiting for the NFL to give Baltimore the ball, and it gave it to Jacksonville instead. And 25 years later, giving a game away and going over to London, I don't know that that's what Tagliabue had in mind when the franchise was there, but certainly for what Shad Khan has done and the ownership of a soccer team over there, this has really opened the doors, and I think it's going to be eye-opening for the 20,000 Ravens fans or so that are making the trip over there this week to see how the NFL is doing business over in Europe right now. And I guess it all started with that World League 2 decades ago, right?
Well, yes. They started doing this a decade ago. The Dolphins, I believe, were the first team that gave away a game 10 years ago. This has been going on. But to me, everybody talks about, well, when is the NFL actually going to put a franchise in London? And my answer to that is, why would the NFL ever put a franchise in London? This is the perfect solution for them. You play 3 or 4 games. Maybe it'll end up being 6 or 7 a year. Maybe we'll have every NFL team playing 1 game in London each year. I don't know but this to me is the perfect solution. Because if you put a team in London, you talked earlier about a competitive disadvantage.
No, it's incredible.
That would be the worst competitive disadvantage in the history of the league. I mean, the logistics of putting a team in London. Even if you do 3-week road trips in the United States, or and another 3-week homestand in London. I mean, just all the traveling itself, the logistics, bringing in players. How much less attractive it would be for free agents to go all the way over to London as opposed to one of the 31 teams in the United States. I mean, there are all kinds of logistical nightmares associated with putting a team in London that has to actually play there 8 times a year as opposed to just having each team in the NFL make the 1 trip a year over there.
Gene Fournette joining us here from the Florida Times-Union, longtime insider columnist and NFL follower of all things Jaguars. Are the Jaguars the home team over there? I mean, are there 10, 20, 30,000 people in Europe that love the Jaguars that come in and make this their home game? Because I've talked to some Ravens people. I mean, I know there are Ravens fans because of Ravens leaving the Tower and Poe and all of that London stuff. I know there's some Ravens fans in Ireland. I get emails and I see them out on the web. But I would think with the Jaguars doing this, and I know it's been a depressed franchise from a victory standpoint, but they have sort of laid some groundwork. I mean, I was in that hotel about 6 weeks ago, Gene, over there next to Wembley, and it's all Jaguarsed up. I mean, it feels sort of like they want the Jaguars to feel like the home team when they're over there?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Jaguars have gradually built a little bit of a following over there in the UK, and it's been pretty good for them because they've been a consistent presence over there. But at the same time, when the actual event actually happens, and you start to take the temperature of the crowd there, and which ones are for the Jaguars, which ones will be for the Ravens, I don't think you'll see an overwhelming home field advantage. I think it'll almost feel, I don't want to say it'll feel like totally like a neutral site college game, because that's where a stadium is like with the Florida Georgia game. It's half Florida, half Georgia. I don't think it'll be like that. But you will see when good things happen for the Ravens in the game. I think you'll see a significant amount of cheering as will happen for the Jaguars, and then there will be a segment of the population or the crowd in that game that really won't be for either team. They just want to go and watch the spectacle of NFL football. But I don't think you will see an overwhelming crowd advantage for the Jaguars in that game. It might be a little bit of an edge for them, but I think when you get to that game, you'll pretty much notice it's a totally different feel than any NFL game you would ever see in the United States.
Hey, Gene, we'll get to the football in a minute, but I want to give you a chance to give me a little travelogue, right? We got a lot of fans going over there. A lot of people have hit me. We're throwing a party on Saturday over in the East London, in the Docklands area. We're taking the Emirates Air cable car across the River Thames to the O2 Arena as a fan base. And you've made this trip so many times now. I guess from a football perspective, the Jaguars know their way around. Give me a little primer when someone says, I'm going over to London to see a football game. What are some things they should be doing while they're over there?
Well, yeah, I tell you what, when you talk to the sports media about stuff like this, I don't think people realize that we don't really have time to do a lot of sightseeing when we're there. We're going to practice, we're filing our stories, and we go, and we might find a restaurant. I stayed at the same hotel in London at the Marble Arch Marriott. I've gone over. I went over to see Parliament. You go over to see the changing of the guard. It's almost walking distance. Maybe you can take a cab and maybe go a couple miles. But there's a lot of things to see there from that are all within walking distance a little bit. Or you can go out. Personally, if I were a fan and I actually had time, 4, 5, 6 days there, I'd probably go see I'd probably go see an English Premier League game. Just to see what the spectacle is like. I went to go see a Fulham game because, of course, Shad Khan owns that, and Fulham is no longer in the English Premier League. They were relegated. But shoot, I'd go there. There's literally 12 or 14 teams that you could take the train and go see. And to me, I would definitely do that. You don't have to be a big time soccer fan, but just to go watch the spectacle of how crazy we think we go crazy for football here in this country. Go to an English Premier League game, and you will find maybe a little bit higher level of fan rowdiness at those games. And I don't mean that you
hooligans
from the standpoint of a safety factor. I'm just saying it's quite a spectacle.
Well, I saw Chelsea play Man United 20 years ago at Stamford Bridge in London, and it definitely was otherworldly. It was a very, very memorable night. West Ham's playing at home this week at London Stadium, so a lot of fans are going over there on Saturday to do that. We got Gene Fournette on the line. He's down in Jacksonville, Florida, longtime columnist, almost 4 decades now at the Florida Times-Union. He will be in London filing stories, chasing the Jaguars. This is a better version of the Jaguars, right, than what we've seen the last few years. Certainly week 1, it's Jekyll Hyde to week 2. We thought after week 1, whoa, we got to see the Jaguars in 2 weeks. After this weekend, I think it was established the Titans are the best team in that division, but that doesn't mean that this can't be a dangerous game for the Ravens on Sunday, because I think it is.
Oh, I don't look. Trying to figure out, it's not that hard to figure. Actually, it's not that hard to figure out the Jaguars. If you can contain their running game with Leonard Fournette, you've got probably 75% chance of winning the game, because Blake Bortles is just you can see that they just don't trust him enough to go ahead and win the game for them. And why would you? I mean, he hasn't proven it. And now his best receiver is out for the season, Allen Robinson, with a torn ACL. So that's going to make it a lot easier for the Ravens secondary in terms of coverage. But I will say this: the Jaguars' defense is for real. That defense held up for about 2.5 quarters against the Tennessee Titans the other day. But they kept getting sent back out on the field, and the offense kept getting themselves in these horrific down and distance situations. On four consecutive possessions, they had either at least a 1st and 20 or a 2nd and 19 on 4 consecutive possessions.
Tom Brady can't operate in that offense, right? I mean, literally, right?
Yeah. Tom Brady or Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers might be a 1st and 20 eraser, but Blake Bortles is not. I don't even know that I guess Joe Flacco could be at times. He's certainly a much better quarterback than Blake Bortles. But it'll be interesting to see, especially with the Ravens defense, I believe has 8 interceptions in their first 2 games, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that's going to make it even harder for them to trust Blake Bortles to go ahead and try to attack them vertically. All their passes are just they're little short passes, safe passes, and they just aren't opening up the playbook for Blake Bortles. And I think what you'll see on Sunday is a very tight, low-scoring game. I think the first team that gets to 17 points will win the game.
Well, Fournette's trying to run the ball, but you lose your number one weapon in the offense to go down the field, and you have a quarterback that's suspect and an O-line that's not that great to begin with. I don't know that you can expect miracles over there. We lost Yanda this week. We've lost more players than any team in the league, but I still feel pretty good about where the Ravens are right now at 2-0. I don't think you expected to see a 2-0 version of the Ravens and this sort of ball-hawking defense that we've had. This has been a nice little change of pace, and I think there's more optimism around here than there's been in a long time.
Well, I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, look, we all know the NFL is a week-to-week league. I mean, just look at the Jaguars. After the first week, everybody was euphoric over them going to Houston and having 10 sacks. 10 sacks. I mean, who has 10 sacks in a football game? Seriously. So they go and they sack Savage and Deshaun Watson 10 times, and probably even just as surprisingly, they kept Blake Bortles clean. The Jaguars had no sacks against the Texans. Of course, everything flipped last week. They turned the ball over 3 times. I think they gave up like maybe 3 sacks in the game. But the Jaguars are a team that has to play from out front. If the Jaguars fall behind by 7 or 10 points, they're done. They're just done. Blake Bortles very rarely, except for the fluke game of the Chicago Bears last year, where they overcame a 16-0 deficit and won 17-16 on a touchdown pass in which the Bears defensive back fell down. The Jaguars never come back in games. I mean, they've got a reputation. Bortles has a reputation. There's a reason why Blake Bortles is 12-35 as a starter for the Jaguars. He doesn't win close games. And the Jaguars, the way they're built right now, they're built to play in tight games. Play really good defense, give yourself a chance to win in the fourth quarter. That's the way that they are built. Run the ball, be more physical. But quite frankly, in the first 2 games, Leonard Fournette has just been at best just okay. Now I do think he's an incredibly tough running back. He will get yards after contact. If you do not bring that guy down and lock him up, he's battling. He's getting the 2 or 3 extra yards.
Gene, who is their best player at this point? Is that Ramsey now? I mean, was Robinson really their best player before the injury?
No, I would give a little bit more of a nod to Ramsey because quarterbacks just don't throw his way. He didn't have one ball thrown his way against the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans were always going after A.J. Bouye or Aaron Coleman. They never threw the ball in Ramsey's direction. Now, the Houston Texans probably threw it maybe 5 or 6 times at Ramsey, but he's really, really good. He's a big physical corner, and he makes it awfully tough for receivers to get any separation. And he's clearly their best player right now. And I think that the Jaguars would really like Leonard Fournette to be rising up and getting in that stratosphere. Have a type of year maybe not like Ezekiel Elliott had last year, because that was just crazy for a rookie running back. But I mean, they fully expect Leonard Fournette to be a 1,000-yard rusher. The Jaguars cannot possibly get to six or seven wins without Leonard Fournette being a 1,000-yard rusher. That would be a minimum requirement.
You know, every time I see Ramsey play, I'm going to remember how much Ozzie wanted him, you know, and he was taken with the 5th pick last year. Ronnie Stanley was on the 6th pick. Of course, the gas mask thing came out, all the quarterbacks with Goff and Wentz and the deals and the craziness of the draft. But, you know, the Ravens were one player, literally one slot away. They would have loved to have had Jalen Ramsey. He was their favorite player in the draft last year.
Well, and rightfully so. And, you know, Ozzie Newsome has had a reputation over the years of a guy that is really pretty consistently good at finding talent. And I'm telling you, player evaluation is not as easy as people think it is. You just look at all the quarterback busts that there have been in the first round, and Ozzie's batting average. If there was a batting title for player evaluation over the course of a decade, Ozzie Newsome would probably be as good as a candidate as anybody. Because,
he's Ted Williams. He hit 400, right?
It's not an easy science. It really is not.
Well, I mean, and that's proven, you know, over the course of time. You've been doing this a long time. We've been doing this a long time. Gene Fournette joining us here from the Florida Times-Union. He's been at it 36 years, which is a decade longer than me, as a sports columnist down there, along with all the other Jacksonville legends and Vito Stellino and some other Baltimore transplants, Sam Kavaris. We got half of Baltimore down there, Gene. They all get their flip-flops on, and you know, they got all that open land and space down there and the palm trees, and they never come back, right?
Well, don't forget, we have hurricanes, too. So
well, thanks for pointing that out. I mean, hey, we'll see you over in London. I do appreciate the time and always appreciate the visits and the insights into football. We'll send everybody out to Gene Fournette to follow you on Twitter as well as at the Times-Union website. Great having you on, Gene.
Okay, thanks, Nestor. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Gene Fournette, longtime columnist down there in Jacksonville. We got the Jaguars over in London this week. Our party starts at 11 a.m. We're going to be over on the east side in the Docklands area at the DLR stop called Royal Victoria. It's right by the Emirates Air cable car, which we'll be taking at 2:52. We're going to march across the River Thames to the O2 Arena and have some fun. I've got a hearty group over there. But on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's going to be tourist stuff. And then, of course, on Sunday, it's football all day long as the Jaguars and the Ravens get it going early in the morning over here, mid-afternoon over there from jolly old England and Wembley. You can find anything you missed this week out in the buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Don't forget, Nasty at WNST.net is the hotline to me anytime, anywhere. That's our email. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We'll also be streaming over there, doing some Facebook Live, as well as some YouTube video clips from the streets of London. So we'll entertain you as the weekend goes on, and the radio will go on as well. And Luke is joining us over there for the Pink Floyd exhibition as well. So I'm trying to check all the boxes here while we're over in Europe for a couple of days. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.